Hey, day 2 of our getting you ready the last 3 weeks for our private pilot rating. First, we're going to go over here real quick. Heather's putting up 2 more members on the HOGS Wall of Fame. We have David, completed his private pilot add-on. And then we have Peter, who has just recently passed his commercial pilot. All right, so let's go over here and I'm going to show you what we're going to review. We're going to review a little bit of airworthiness requirements, and then we're going to test your knowledge. But we're going to do a little bit of teaching for review, and then we'll come back and ask questions not related to the video, but still on the same topic of airworthiness requirements. So this is the private pilot section. We're going to cover day and night VFR, what is required in the helicopter. We're going to roll that video for you. It's about 7 minutes as a review, but I wanted to point out to you, this is the inside of what HOGS looks like. Over here is the check marks on how you can figure out whether you've completed a video or not. Here's how you can tell how much of a video you've completed, whether you're 3/4 done or 1/4 of the way through. And then this is the button here for complete and incomplete. So this is how you, when you're inside the site, if let's say you watched all those videos, but you go, you know what, I'm good here, here, and here, but I want to come back and review those, uncheck them with this button. That's how you can keep track of what you've viewed, what you haven't viewed, and what you want to go back to. So again, let's do a little teaching here. This is stuff you have to know the day of the check ride, and that's what this is about. So we're going to review equipment and a few other things. Then we're going to come back and ask you some questions from the study guide, not relevant to the video. So that we're going to ask you some more stuff about maintenance questions, because I guarantee you the examiner is going to cover maintenance. What can you do? And otherwise, how can you figure out what to do as a pilot? What maintenance can you do and not do? And so on. So we're going to come back and test your knowledge. So let's roll that video. All right, in this video, we're going to cover what you need equipment-wise and instrument-wise in the aircraft for day and night VFR. There's a lot to it. I'm going to put a document here around the video from our private pilot study guide that will help you with memorization if you want to open it and download it after this video, or watch this video as many times as needed. There's a lot of required stuff, and then there are steps. If something is inoperative, there are steps to take to solve this issue, and we're going to cover all that. So I'm going to share the screen with you. There's a lot of stuff on some of these pages, more than I like, but there's a lot to it. So let's share the screen. First, we're going to cover what equipment is required for day VFR. The memory aid is camel's foot, which is compass, altimeter, manifold pressure gauge, airspeed indicator, landing gear position indicator, if landing gear equipped. Most of your small training helicopters, you're not going to have that. Seatbelt, shoulder harness, fuel gauge, oil pressure gauge, oil temperature gauge, tachometer for each engine, and a strobe. So this equipment is required for day VFR to be legal to fly. Now there are some additional items for the R22, and it's the most popular trainer. So the memory aid is COLAG or COLAG, cylinder head temperature gauge, outside air temperature gauge, low RPM warning system, lights, caution and warning lights, alternator, governor. Okay, next let's cover what additional you need for night VFR. The memory aid is PELs, position lights, anti-collision lights, landing light if operated for hire, electrical system, alternator or generator. You have to have an alternate source of power. You can't rely on just an alternator or just a battery. You have to have something providing the power as an alternator generator, and you have to have a capable battery and spare fuses if applicable. Now there's some additional limitations for the R22 during night VFR operations. The memory aid is NALO, navigation light, anti-collision light, instrument light, landing light, and orientation must be visual reference to ground objects illuminated solely by ground lights or celestial illumination. Now there is a way to move an aircraft. It's called a special flight permit or a ferry permit. If one of these required pieces of equipment becomes inoperative, now this is something as a student pilot, you're not going to deal with this. You're going to call back to your home base and you're going to get help from them on what to do next. Because there's a lot behind getting a ferry permit. This is something as a student you're going to need help with. To get one of these ferry permits, an online form is going to need to be submitted to the Flight Standards District Office. We also call those FSDOs, indicating the purpose of flight, proposed itinerary, essential crew required to operate the aircraft, in what way, if any, does the aircraft not comply with the applicable airworthiness requirements, and any other information requested by the administrator considered necessary for the purpose of prescribing operating limitations. So under what conditions would a special flight permit be issued? Examples are fly aircraft to a location where repairs, alterations, or maintenance are to be performed, production flight testing new production aircraft, evacuating aircraft from areas of impending danger, conducting customer demonstration flights in new production aircraft that have satisfactorily completed production flight tests. So those are some of the types of things why they would issue one. I'm going to give you a real world example now of how a ferry permit was used where I was involved. I worked for a company about a half an hour north of where we're at now at the HOGS hangar, and I was doing flight instruction for this company, and they purchased an aircraft that they were going to bring back for training, but it was out of annual. So they applied for a ferry permit. The mechanic had to go up, give it just a quick inspection, make sure it was safe for flight, and obtained the ferry permit so that we could one time go pick that aircraft up, bring it back to home base, and do a full annual versus the mechanic having to haul all his tools up there. They allowed the company to one time fly it from point A to point B, no dilly-dallying or going anywhere else. They authorized him one time after the mechanic checked the aircraft to make sure it was airworthy in order to bring that aircraft home, so a full annual could be done in the maintenance center versus out in, some guy's garage or somebody's barn somewhere. They wanted to get it back home. There's an example of how a ferry permit could be applied. All right, so we've covered the required equipment and how you would move an aircraft if one of those required pieces becomes inoperative. We know how to do it. Now, what about equipment that's not required? And the best example I can think of is a clock. Let's say you have a clock on the panel and the clock stops working. That's not under the required equipment, so you could placard it, inoperative, and make sure that it's unhooked, and you could legally fly the aircraft because it's not required equipment. However, it does need to be unhooked, deactivated, and placarded inoperative. So we've covered the required equipment that you have to have, what you might be able to do if one of those pieces becomes inoperative, and what to do with pieces that are not required. And again, I'm going to put a document here from the Private Pilot Study Guide that will help you study and memorize this equipment.
And it looks like when Kenny does it. Okay, so I paused the video to remove the plastic wrap because I'm not a famous YouTube star like Kenny. I'm going to see if I can do the rest of this with one hand. Just like Kenny's. Tabs, questions, and answers. With my commercial check ride being about 3 to 4 weeks away, it's going to take some time and dedication to cover this entire book in that amount of time. So, good job, HOGS. This thing looks great.
Okay, I know you're all getting tired of hearing it, but Chapter 2 in the top 10 check ride tips. Guess what? Those of you that watch the videos, you probably know what it's going to be. Prepare with the practical test standards. Let me tell you what Taz and I wrote in here. I've learned that there are instructors who don't use the practical test standards, and thus students who do not use and have never heard of the PTS. If the PTS is not one of the first books your instructor pulls out, then it might be time to find a new school. Get it? That's how important it is. This is Chapter 2 of the of our top 10 check ride tips book, which you can get down below. Heather will ship you a copy while supplies last, in the US that is. There's a link down below for that. I harp on it all the time. And the reason I do is because I know there's those of you that don't use it and instructors that aren't using it, and it's a bad thing. PTS, you gotta be using it. Okay? So you got some review on equipment, day and night, VFR, all that kind of happy stuff. So we're going right to the Private Pilot Study Guide. I've circled some questions on your private pilot check ride. This is for people down to about 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away, a week away, 3 weeks away. Mainly about 3 weeks away is what we've planned this on. And it even said in here, I think I missed the page, we tell you in this book, start with the PTS 3 weeks in advance, okay? So this is video 2. So we're gonna cover some of the things regarding the aircraft. Now remember, I failed my first private pilot check ride. One of the reasons that I failed was every time the instructor went to show me the aircraft logbooks, he would say, oh, a mechanic's not here and they're locked up. We'll check them another day. That continues. Last minute, we're not probably going through the PTS as we should have, checking things off. I show up with an FAA examiner the day of the check ride, and one of the first things he says, well, let's take a look at the aircraft logbooks. And my heart sank. I'm like, oh, well, they're over with the mechanic. Well, go get them. So we get the instructor. He goes, luckily, the mechanic's there. They bring him over. He lays out the logbooks and says, show me the 100-hour inspection. I'm fibbing my way through, pretending I knew the logbook. It was an older aircraft. Could you imagine if you've never seen aircraft logbooks in your life and you try to open it up and find a 100-hour inspection? I look pretty stupid as I'm going. And the FAA examiner sitting there going, as I'm leafing through the pages. Do you get my drift? Recently, we had a member who emailed us about his check ride. He was excited. However, he had a small problem during the check ride. He'd never seen the aircraft logbook. Same story as mine. So I'm not the only one this has happened to. Happens all the time. Busiest flight school I ever worked at, every time we get ready for a check ride, we had to drive an hour away to get the logbooks. They were always down with the mechanic, and it was a scurry the last minute to go find the logbooks and show them to a student. This stuff is important. It's the beginning of the check ride with certificates and documents, airworthiness requirements. This is where it's starting. You got to be current, and your aircraft's got to be current. So let's test your knowledge here. Take out a piece of paper, write these down. I'm going to go through the questions. Think about it. How are you going to answer the examiner the day of the test? Are you prepared to answer these questions? Take out a piece of paper right now. Write down the answer. I picked short ones, but short ones that are super important. Was building a big PowerPoint for this today, and I got confused building a PowerPoint for all the stuff that's involved just in airworthiness requirements. And I finally said, you know what, Heather, let's just shoot this video because I know what it takes, right? I've been doing this long enough that it's about knowing the information. I don't need a fancy PowerPoint to show you today, okay? They're going to ask you this. What part of the regulation specifically describes the maintenance, preventive maintenance, and alteration procedures? That should pop right into your head immediately. You should know exactly what part that is and where to go find it, okay? Write it down. If you're lacking in this, you're already behind the game. At 3 weeks away, you should know this. You should be able to spout off which part it is. Next question. As a pilot, are you allowed to perform maintenance, preventive maintenance, and alterations to the aircraft? Can you? Do you know? Have you been over this section? The examiner is going to ask you this on a private pilot check ride. I don't know this has ever been skipped in any of them I've ever sat through, maybe once or twice. This question is always asked of you because you have to know. Okay? So write it down, the answer to that question. As a pilot, are you allowed to perform maintenance, preventive maintenance, alterations to the aircraft? Next one. What is an AD? Many of you, boom, you know what that is. I can tell you, recently, we were prepping someone for a check ride who was really sharp, great in the aircraft, good on the ground school, studied high on the written, doing great. And the night before, I sat down with my old personal notebook, started flipping pages and asked him a question. He swore he'd never heard of 80. Didn't know what it was, never heard of it. So here's a recent case this year where a really well prepared student from out of state here for check ride didn't know this. What is an AD? What's AD stand for and what is it? Got to know this. On this AD, the next question is, I'm not going to tell you what it is yet because hopefully you know. Maybe you're writing it down. Maybe you're scurrying to look it up really quick. What type of these ADs are there relating to the frequency of the AD? So what is the AD? What is the frequency of the AD? There's two of them. There's one kind and then there's another kind. You need to know what both of these are. What's the definition of it? What's AD stand for? And how many of them are there? What is the frequency of those? Okay? So, the next one, if you're super sleuth, you've answered every one of these correctly. If you haven't, you need to keep studying. You're not ready for your check ride. What are the methods for complying with the AD? We have 3 listed in the Private Pilot Study Guide. 3 elements, which I love the number 3. There's an old series of videos that we should maybe redo one of these days on the helicopter 3s. So many things related to the number 3. There's 3 things you need to know about complying with this AD. If you're following us along, write it down. Write down. If you know them, write it down. If you don't, you're behind the game on your private pilot check ride. But you've got time, because that's what this series of videos is. We're giving you things to think about, and I'm pointing out stuff that I've seen, and I know what happens. Next question, what is an SB? So what is it? What's SB stand for, and what is it? Do you know it? Great. If you do, you're good. If not, go look it up, or stand by for the answer, I guess. And then I need to know, must you comply with that SB? So what's it stand for? What is it? And do you need to comply with it? And if you do need to comply with it or not, why would you want to comply with it? What is the reason for complying with an SB? Number 1, do you have to? Or if you're going to, why would you want to? Just saying. A couple more. If you're answering all these, you're in good shape. If you're lacking in any of these areas, again, you've got to be good with all this stuff. I like this one. Should know it. But again, if nobody's exposed you to this, as of the day I failed my check ride with the FAA, there's no way I could have known this because we never even looked at logbooks. This question, how many logbooks are there for the aircraft you fly? Now, if you have a really old aircraft, it could be multiple. But let's say an aircraft that's only a couple years old, hasn't been around that long, maybe it's got 3 or 4 or 500 hours on it. How many logbooks are there for the aircraft? There's 2. Whoops, I just gave you the answer. These can be separate and they could be in the same book, but technically there are 2. So I gave you the answer. What are the names of these logbooks? I didn't give that up yet. What are they labeled? What are they for? So you need to understand what are the names of these logbooks, and then of course in the name you'll understand what it's related to. Okay, I asked you simple questions with a very short answer, and this is where I got frustrated in the PowerPoint today. Some of these answers are lengthy on ferry permits and what you have to have with you in the aircraft. Some of these are really long, and that's where I got confused. So I picked things that are very important that I recently saw a really well-rounded person almost ready for check ride, didn't know what ADs were, didn't know what SBs are. I'm going to stress one more time. This is why this is the first 2 videos we've covered the PTS that you need to be going through. We did the first video on certificates and documents. This is where the check ride starts. And you saw with my own story, this FAA guy did sit down that day and he started the check ride off with, let's take a look at the aircraft logbooks. So he went right to airworthiness requirements. How do you think my check ride went after that? He kept it going, but when you struggle with the very first question on an oral examination, and then I tried fibbing my way through, I could have just said, I'm going to be honest, man, I've never seen them. That goes back on the instructor, but the examiner's still not going to be impressed. And I was so nervous and terrified anyway that just put That put a screw to the oral test immediately. So we muddle through that. I find it, he's not impressed at all. And the check ride continues. I didn't get enough sleep. I wasn't as prepared as I should be. I get blown away on that not having the, never seeing the logbooks. Can you imagine how frazzled I was by that point? So the check ride goes on, and I knew a lot. I had a good instructor, but he never pushed me hard on the ground. And we did a bunch of ground. We didn't do enough. And maybe in my instructor's defense, when it was just the two of us sitting there, maybe I was doing pretty well answering questions, which I'm sure I was, because he wouldn't have sent me if he didn't think I could do it. But then the stress of the day, not having the proper amount of sleep, and then the check ride starting off bad because of the logbooks, you can imagine where it went from there. So then when I'm stumbling and stuttering around trying to answer things, the examiner's just getting more and more frustrated. So it's kind of being set up for failure. So back to the PTS. If we'd have went through the PTS properly, we would have got those logbooks out and looked at them, because it's in the PTS in the one most important page we've already mentioned. The most important page is everything you have to have with you the day of the test. And you're probably getting tired of hearing it. I'm going to tell you again. It tells you everything that has to be there, what you have to have completed, what you need to have with you, and one of those things is the aircraft logbooks. If we'd have been going through the PTS 3 weeks ahead of time, my instructor could have went, oh, man, those logbooks, we haven't covered that yet. Let's call the mechanic, let's get those in here. So that, I'll blame that one back on my instructor. And to this day, he's one of my great friends. I was actually even in his wedding at one point. But he screwed up. It was his job to go make sure I was going through the PTS. And I could say, thinking back a long time ago, I don't remember using the PTS back then. I know the kid that helped me retest, I know we were using the PTS, but with that first instructor, I don't think we were even using it. So there you go. If you'd like a copy of this, you can go down below and get a free PDF of Chapter 1. And on that same page, there is a link for the physical spiral bound. As you can see, nice book. Lay it flat. This is what I like. Open it up. A digital copy is cool and would be cool, and we might offer that at some point. However, just like today, working with the digital copy, online trying to build a presentation, I got frustrated and sat down and just started going through the book, and I'm like, this is so much easier. There are times where, in this instance, I'm marking it up, and I'm writing, I'm going to ask this one, and I'm going to ask this one, and put a little note in here about this, about what I want to talk about. That's the beauty of this. So, we've had some confusion so far. They're on the same page. The free PDF is in the link that's right below the video, and the link for the free PDF, Chapter 1, is right beside the physical copy. They're side by side, so if you just scroll a little farther, depending on what device you're on, they're both there. The beauty of the PDF is once you gotta sign up and give us your email, of course, because that's what we do, and then we're gonna email you the links for the other videos that are coming up over the next 2 weeks for people getting ready. And I'll put a link right about somewhere, either up here or over there. I can't think quite quick enough right at the moment. For the first video. Actually, I'll go back to the intro video. There's 2 videos prior to this one. I'll put links up above for both videos if you want to go back and start from the beginning to follow us along. And by signing up for that PDF, you'll get yesterday's video, this video, and the rest of the videos. We'll email you when those videos are ready.
Live to fly another day. Helicopterground.com.
All right, so the answers are to the questions we've been through. What part of the regulation specifically describes the maintenance, preventive maintenance, and alteration procedures is Part 43? You should be very familiar with Part 43. If you're not, you shouldn't be 3 weeks away from a check ride. Part 43, boom. Examiner's probably going to ask you that. You need to know that. As a pilot, are you allowed to perform maintenance, preventive maintenance, and alterations to the aircraft you operate? Yes, but only as outlined in 43.3D, G, and Appendix A, Part 43C. What's that tell you? Go to Part 43, leaf through it, read a little bit. During the check ride, he or she isn't gonna necessarily make you know exactly on one specific thing. Can I or can't I? At the private pilot level, though, he is going to want to hear, or she's going to want to hear, is Part 43. That's where I can go and look up what I can and can't do as a private pilot, and that's where I'm going to go. You've got it. You know where it's at in the FAR aim because you've been working through the FAR aim, right? Know exactly where that's tabbed. You probably have your little sticker on the side. You're going to go to Part 43. Tell him, I'm going to go to Part 43 for whatever specific thing it is I'm wanting to work on. You go check Part 43. That's it. Next, what is an AD? It is an airworthiness directive. Regulatory and issued by FAA to notify aircraft owners of unsafe conditions of aircraft. So, an airworthiness directive is something that you must comply with. You have to do it. Next question, what types of airworthiness directives are there relating to the frequency of the AD? There's one-time ADs and there are recurring ADs. So when the FAA puts out this AD, might be something you only have to do one time. You have to replace a certain part with a new part. Or it might be an inspection that you have to do every 6 months. There's a whole long list of what they could be, but it's either a one-time or a recurring. Next, what are the methods for complying with the AD, the airworthiness directives? Inspect, replace, and repair. And there's a specific section in the logbooks that these ADs will be recorded and have to be complied with. Next question, what is an SB? Service bulletin. A service bulletin is issued by the aircraft manufacturer. It's a service bulletin. Must you comply with an SB, a service bulletin? No, not regulatory, but it is advisory. Why should you comply with an SB? Safety, insurance, warranty. So it could be a number of things. So the SB, even though it's not mandatory, it might be required by your insurance company. So in SB, you need to specifically look at it for the specific aircraft and figure out is this something that you're going to do or not. Normally it's going to be the owner or operator, but you as the private pilot could be. As a student, you could own your own aircraft. But that is a service bulletin. So not mandatory, but most likely it's something you probably should do. How many logbooks are there for the aircraft you fly? A minimum of 2. And what are they? Airframe and engine, right? So the mechanics are working on the aircraft. They do maintenance to the engine. Anything revolving around that engine gets in the the airframe logbook. It's getting late. I'm getting tired. Let me back up. Airframe and engine. Okay, so let's start with engine. If they work on the engine, they do any kind of maintenance, they replace the engine, anything that revolves around the engine is in one logbook. Airframe, pretty much everything else on that aircraft, airframe-wise, is going to be another logbook. They can be in the same book, but I have seen them separate, right? So an aircraft logbook must have a section for the airframe, a section for the engine, 2 totally separate areas for recording this maintenance. So hopefully that helped. For those of you that are snapping up on you knew all that and you're experts, great. But time and time again, I've had people that were close and hadn't heard of some of these things. So there's a lot of stuff in airworthiness requirements. There's a whole lot more. Again, this series of videos is to get you thinking, put you on the spot by asking you some questions. And I want you thinking, how are you going to answer the examiner? Not just how the book says it or what the answer is. Think about sitting there answering those questions. What are you verbally going to say? Because you're not going to be there with your notebook open reading it to him or her. You're going to be pulling it from memory, looking at it on a page and memorizing it over and over again. And sitting with your instructor or your friends is one thing. But the day of the check ride, when you're sitting there across from the examiner, it's totally different, right? So that's why we learn through repetition. We go over this stuff, and we go over this stuff, and we go over this stuff, because the day of the test, when the nervousness kicks in, and you're sitting across the table, everything changes. So, God, I edit so many so's out. Heather's always laughing at me because I'm always, when I do editing, I'm cutting out so many so's. Wish I'd stop saying it. Private Pilot Study Guide is down below. There's a link right below the video. You can get chapter 1 as a PDF, sign up for it, and we will deliver that PDF through your email, and you'll get an email for the other videos we're putting out for this series to help you the last several weeks getting ready for the check ride. And there's also a physical copy there. If you want to order the physical copy, have something you can work with, tangible, hold on to it, open it up, work through it, write the answers in the first half of the chapter, then go check in the second half of that chapter the correct answer. And I keep talking about it only because it's a small, skinny little book, but you know what? Taz and I put it together. You've heard it 1,000 times, most of you. Heather is shipping these again. For a while, we weren't shipping them due to COVID and the world going crazy. We have a box upstairs, so we started shipping them again direct from the HOGS hangar. U.S. only at this time. You can get it on Amazon, but Amazon you'll pay more and then pay shipping on top of that. So in the U.S., we'll send this to you direct from the HOGS hangar while supplies last. I'll put a link down here below for this as well. One more time, there's 10 chapters, but then at the end, there are bonus things that Taz learned by going out and interviewing examiners and saying, hey, we're putting out a book of top 10 check ride tips, but give us some bonus material. Give us some things that you see as examiners that people are messing up. And Taz and I have spent a lot of time together, hanging out, going to heli expos. He's been here to help do ground with us. He's flown with students here with us at HOGS. Even just this past summer, he was here for a full week and helped us with the final approach course. And Taz and I see eye to eye on this stuff. I mean, we agree, and we went through the top 10 that we picked as the things that we see. So it's a short read, but it's a powerful read. Because as humans, you know, we make mistakes, and we commonly make the same mistakes. And this little book will help you with all these little things that trip people up. Said it 1,000 times because I've watched it happen over and over again. People get tripped up on the simple stuff. So we're going to wrap that up, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. I think it's weather. It is. Oh, we'll dream up something here. We know that people tell us weather's one of their biggest issues. It's been a while since we did a poll, but we polled our members about 5 years ago. Time to do that again. Heather, put that on the list. Let's make a poll for what do you struggle with your training. We know the last time we did it, weather was number one. The number one thing that was kicking people in the rear was weather. There's a lot to know, and examiners don't usually hit a lot of it, but they will hit some things regarding weather, and especially anything that can kill you. They're going to cover. So weather is a big topic with a ton of information, and there's just a lot to know there. Which is why we have the no-go button. Give you the confidence to help you make the decision when you want to go, you need to go, your boss wants you to go, your wife wants you to get home for the kids' ball game, and the weather's kind of iffy. It hurts. It hurts a lot of time when you have to go.
Live to fly another day. Helicopterground.com.
I'm not going because the weather sucks, or the weather's going to suck. Anyway, we'll talk more about that in the next video. Sign up down below, and we'll see you next time. Peace out. Remember the examiner sitting there going, when you show up not prepared. I've been there, done that, and it is not a good time. All right. Peace. Bye. See ya. Out.